Basically, yes, one thing when you're working on jobs, okay, and you've got this whole list of jobs, you've got to keep in mind like stuff is going to go wrong. Okay? You're going to have jobs and that's just part of the game that we're playing in business that you're going to screw up. Your guys are going to screw up. Maybe well, not a customer really, but you're going to screw up. Guys are going to screw up. You're going to misorder things. You're going to overlook things that you've done 100 times, but because you're getting in a quick, being too quick or something like that, you're going to miss it, right? And I'll give you an example so just this week, I went out and bid a job. So not an estimator, I went out and bid this one job, super simple, like some little handyman repair type stuff. Okay, it was like a $4,000, $4,500 job. The guy had a mobile home, wanted us to replace some skirting on part of the mobile home, front and back. Wanted us to do some crack repair with, backfilling, pressure wash the driveway, and then he had this little 5 or 6 foot section square that had been demoed out and wanted us to report it. Okay, the guys should have been able to do that job in full in one day. Now, because of rain, it got delayed a couple days. Like they were out there for like 4 hours and then 2 hours and 2 hours, which sucks, but it is what it is, right? So there's problem number one. That was out of our control, is the weather. So now I've paid guys to go there for 3 days, 3 sets of fuel going there and back and all that crap that nobody planned on. It's not the customer's fault. It's not their fault. It's not even your fault. It's just part of the luck of the draw, right? So you're going to have things like that. Now, here's the part of the job that I got too fast and I overlooked, is the customer calls and says, hey, we want to backfill all of our joint lines too. We're like, okay, cool. We'll give you a price on that. So I give them a price. Now I'm thinking my guys are already on site. They're already pressure washing. They're already grinding. It ain't going to take a whole lot longer. I called the foreman. Hey man, how much do you think? He goes, 2-3 hours. We can do this, right? I'm like, cool. I was like, let's just throw a couple hundred labor, a couple hundred material, and move on. I think we did a half day's labor with 2 guys, right? I think we charged the guy $1,200. Here's what I failed to do. I took the assumption, me as both the estimator and the owner, I looked at the pictures we had. I went by what the foreman even said, even though he's not used to necessarily doing that every day, but I can't blame him.
Right.
And because 80 to 90% of the time, I know what an average joint line is. Well, I didn't think about the fact that these joint lines could be different, and I didn't look at it further or ask him the question. The joint lines were 1 3/4 inches wide versus a standard joint line is either a saw blade wide to maybe 1 inch. These things were 1 3/4 inches. Now, the reason is because the guy used to have wood in there as joint lines, and then after time, because it's crap, they rotted out and he took them out, and then it created these big gaping holes and whatever. So we backfill them with sand, then we put back rod in them and we fill them. So I told the guys, I was like, go get back a rod. And he's like, man, them holes are pretty big. I was like, well, just get the biggest back of rod they got, and then get the concrete filler to go on top. Well, he calls me back. He's like, man, it took me 1 bottle just to go 6 feet. Man, I'm gonna need way more bottles. I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, and that backer rod's not filling these up. I'm like, well, how big? And then boom, it hit me like, shoot, I made a mistake. I said, how big are those? So he took a tape measure and he held it up on it, and 1 3/4 inches. I'm like, crap, this is gonna take 10 times more than we thought. So sure as the world, I said, well, go get, he went and got spray foam. So he's filled it up with spray foam, which you could backfill with dirt, sand, rocks, whatever. You need some sort of filler to fill it up, get it up, and then put your liquid on top. Well, so he used spray foam, cut it off, backfilled it. Even doing that, we spent $600 more in material when we thought we were going to spend $200, and had to pay them a whole nother day to go out there. So a job that I only charged $1,200 cost me $1,400.
Right.
But that's my fault. And I even told the customer, I was like, hey man, don't worry about it. You know, he's like, man, them guys work really hard. You know, I feel bad, but blah, blah, blah. I'm like, nope, that's my mistake. So you're going to have things like that. Then you're going to have another situation like I was bringing up where we went out, we did an insulated panel roof. Well, my guy's done 50 of these suckers. He wasn't even a brand new guy. He's been with me 3 years, done 40 or 50 of these things. He knows you've got to check the panels because they dent and ding and scratch easily. That's why with every single cover, we get caulking and touch-up paint. And then the panels are the same front and back. So then you got to look and see if they got dings. You got to flip them, you know, and hope to God that there's not dings on both sides, right? Well, he got in a hurry. He didn't check them. Now that's his fault. It's not the customer's fault. It's not even the fault of the company because they know that it happens sometimes. We should have checked those panels when it got off the truck and then said nope and reject them and send them back and got them changed. So that's mistake number one. That's on our superintendent. Then mistake number two is the foreman goes and fully installs the job, cleans up everything. Customer calls, hey, I'm not paying y'all $12,000 for a bunch of dings and dents in my roof. Well, of course we agree. So I go out there, I investigate. 4 out of the 6 panels that were there definitely dinged up past the point of what I would consider what needs to be acceptable and professional. You don't have no choice. In those panels, there's no way to fix that. You got to take them down, replace them, put them back up. Who's going to pay for that? The customer ain't going to pay for that. And the vendor is going to say, look, y'all signed off on the delivery, like that's on y'all. We don't know. You could have taken the delivery, went and dinged them up, and your superintendent could have dinged them up, your foreman could have dinged them up, the customer could have dinged them up. We delivered those weeks ago. They could have been sitting in their yard and some kid hit them with a baseball bat. We don't know. We're not going to replace those. So guess what? You get to order it all again. And then you get to wait weeks, and now a good customer is turned into a pissed off customer, and it's all because of oversight. Well, that happens. So in that case, it was the foreman's fault. And the superintendent's fault, really, for taking delivery on damaged panels. So you're going to have that. Now, you also have to decide where's the fine line between yelling and screaming and chewing out your foreman or your superintendent, or also just going, okay, guys, you know, you knew better. You should have handled this. You haven't done it in a while, but, you know, and then you come to a happy medium. In that particular situation, I said, look, I get it. You move too fast, whatever. So here's the deal. I'm going to replace the panels, but you're going to take those old panels down and put the new system up, and I'm not paying you for that. I've already paid you to do it once. I'm not paying you twice because it is your fault. And he's like, I agree. So he agreed to it. Superintendent agreed that it was his fault on that part. So he's going to go do the delivery, pick up the new, take the old, trash it out, and that's all on his own time. Now, it's still going to cost me for the panels. It's still costing me 2 days of lost time out of both of those people when I should be making money. But we, at least in that case, are all working together. But if you go yelling and screaming and cussing at everybody and whatever, that ain't going to accomplish nothing. And so all that said, you have to know if you get 10 jobs this month, one of them ain't making you money. Maybe even 2. It's got to be the other 8. But that's also where you cannot cut yourself short and so tight on every single job that you do. Right. That's the number one mistake I see small businesses do, and that's the mistake I made early on. I still occasionally make that mistake where it's like, oh, I just want this job so bad, or I want to earn it, or maybe it's even a cool job that we haven't done in a while, or maybe a big job and you're excited because it's a big job. Ooh, this big fancy job. And so what do? You get your labor and your material as tight as you can get it. You cut that job as tight as you can get it just so you can try to make a buck. And what's going to happen? Soon as you do that, guarantee that job's going wrong. Right. Because you didn't make room for it. Right. I feel like it's like the Dave Ramsey principle of having an emergency fund. If you got $1,000 in your emergency fund, is what he calls it, you can handle a flat tire, broken down truck, your AC went out, now you got a $400 to $600 recharge bill, whatever, and it doesn't affect you. And then what happens is somehow the way the universe works, those things actually happen less because you're prepared for them. But when they do happen, You're prepared for them. Every single time, for me personally, maybe this doesn't apply to everybody else, every single time that I don't prepare for what I know I should prepare for, it works out against me. Every time. So you got to bid jobs. If I go build, these patios and pergolas or concrete job or whatever the job is, I have to bid every job to know that there's money in that job, that maybe that customer doesn't go wrong, but three times down the line, it's going to. I'm either going to break even or lose money or only make 5% when I thought it was going to be 12 or whatever. And at the end of the day, even when we bid jobs the way we bid them, at the margins that we bid them on, which if you're in construction, I think in most cases that needs to be 40 to 50%. Unless you're subcontracting, then it can be 30 to 35. But because you have to account for overhead, marketing, sales, profit. If you don't have those categories, and part of your overhead is losses, and it is every research that I've seen, the average service-based construction company, interior, exterior, roofing to concrete, kitchens to baths to whatever, they make 5 to 15% net profit on a legit running company. Every single time, without question. There's definitely rules. There's definitely people that go outside of that.
So like out of their 40-something%, their cut is the 15.
Yeah, 5 to 15.
Okay.
That's it.
Really
So if you go bid a $10,000 job at a 50% gross margin, you're not making $5,000.
Right.
$5,000's coming into the company.
Right.
10% of that, which is $1,000, pays for your overhead. That's offices and trucks and equipment and insurances and cell phone bills and all that kind of jazz. Okay. Then, or company overhead, depending on the size of your company. Maybe you have internal secretaries and superintendents, project managers, owner salary, and again, that can be exponentially bigger depending on what the size of the company is. Okay, so all of that is overhead. Well, then sales, you got sales. So, most construction companies is anywhere from 5 to 10% of a job, depending on what it is going to go to sales. Now, if you're an owner and you sell the job yourself, that's fine. You still now need to pay out of the company to yourself that percentage, even if it just goes into a separate account and stays in the company. Like in my company, if I go out and sell something, it goes into a separate bank account that I may or may not take the money out of. If that account kind of grows, I might take a little bit out. But I kind of use that as, if I go out and sell something, I also use that as a rainy day savings account for the company too, because I'm still working in the company every day. I'm going to make money off the company as the business owner and as the internal operations manager. So I use those sales as a freebie that goes back into a quote unquote savings account of the company. Maybe 3-4 months down the line, that builds up. Maybe there's $10,000 sitting there. I'll take 3, right? Then there's $10,000. I'll take 3 or 2 or 4 or whatever. I don't always deplete it, because when your rainy day fund and your operations ain't there, then that can kind of be there, right? And so I do that. All those things have to come a little bit out of each job, because when they don't, and a rainy day comes, like legit rain days, right? In all our businesses, we're all outside. If it rains, we're out of pocket. Well, guess what? Bills don't stop for the company, right? You might not be paying out labor, but bills don't stop. Whatever the bills are the bills. And so then it's just going to keep going. I know for us, I don't know what it is right this immediate second. I know it's at least, I think it's around $2,000 a day, $1,500 to $2,000 a day. The company has to bring in gross profit just to get to break even. So if there's a rain day and nothing's going on and nothing's being collected, we're $1,500, $2,000 in the hole. I don't care what size company you are. That could be $100 or that could be $10,000. I mean, but you know, there's money still going out, right? So then when it's not rain days, you got to be somehow making more. When it's not a holiday, you got holidays, you got rain days, you got broken down truck days, you got sick days, you got, oh, half my freaking crew called in 3 days this week. Then you got people who quit, you got people who are fired, you got people who are new, and all of that cycle just keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. And if you don't account for that, you're always going to be up a creek, always going to be chasing your tail, always wondering why you can't get ahead. And if you don't bid jobs that way, it ain't going to work.
Right.
Now, let me see if I've got this board here. I think I got some markers in my truck. I'll get them here in a second. I'm going to show you how we break down labor on something so that you can put together a job and know how that should work. So that if you should know what your labor and what your cost is. So when you show up to a job, you know, in y'all's particular business, you don't have necessarily a lot of material, right? So that doesn't have to go into the equation. But your overhead and all that stuff needs to still go into the equation, and then you know what your approximate labor is. Okay, well then I always round up. If I think there's a day and a half of labor, that's 2 days. If it's a day and 3/4, that's 2 days. If it's a day and a quarter, I might go a day and a half, but that depends on what business you're in. You know, for us, it's harder because we're so project based. Even to send a guy, let's say a 2 or 3 man crew goes to a job for 1 day and a quarter, it's hard to then go start a whole nother job that day. Because by the time you clean up, you've already gone to that job. By the time you clean up, go to another job and set up again, you've already set up and cleaned up twice in 1 day plus 2 travel times. You're losing at least 2 hours. So they're not really getting 3/4 of a day worth on that other job. So what happens is I have to look at the job they're on and I have to charge for that whole amount of time. And that's just part of the job.
Right.
Again, that's where most small businesses make freaking mistakes, is they're not charging for that. They're trying to charge exactly what it is. It don't work out that way. It never does.